Can a man just sit on the toilet and not have to go through what that preacher in The Exorcist had to go through?
My soul from death. God, please, Lord, help me to release this demon. Thank you, Lord, the most merciful, almighty.
What is going on, guys? So today we're back with another deep dive, and today we actually get to go over a non-meta relevant Pokemon, something that a lot of people aren't really talking about. Well, I honestly don't know if people are talking about it a lot. Obviously, it got voted enough to make a deep dive, so it has to be at least thought of by a few people. But either way, it's not in the meta list for PvPoke, and I love doing Pokemon that aren't in the meta list because it kind of sheds light onto other options that we do have outside of the 25 Pokemon that PvPoke deems the best. So, let's actually take a look today at Weavile, who is a Dark and Ice-type Pokemon maxing out at 3,005 CP, with a 0 on attack, 15 defense, and 15 stamina. At level 18.5 though, you do actually hit that 1496, which is actually perfect to get into the Great League with the largest stat product available. Now, if we actually take a look at Weavile compared to the entire Ferocious Cup, if we compare it up against bulk and stat product up against all the other participants, 88th in bulk and 79th in stat product, that's not huge. That's actually pretty low, but you know, I mean, that just kind of means that we're going to be kind of a glass cannon, which in some scenarios is actually perfectly fine. Now, of course, all of that does derive from our base stats with a 243 on attack, 171 in defense, and 172 in stamina. So as you can kind of tell there, we are heavily weighted in the attack, which yes, will actually end up meaning that we are a huge glass cannon here. Now, as far as our moves go, we do actually have a couple of moves to work with here, which is kind of an interesting toolkit. In our fast moves, we do have Ice Shard, Feint Attack, and Snarl, which Ice Shard for 3 1/3 energy per turn for 3 damage per turn. Average stab, it does get bumped up to 3.6, is a decent option. Feint Attack for 3 energy per turn, we do get 3 damage per turn, so we do get 3.6 after stab there again. So Ice Shard definitely looking like the better option so far. But then we do get to Snarl. And Snarl, of course, got reworked not too long ago with a 4.33 on the energy per turn for 1.66 on the damage, which does get boosted to 1.99 for accuracy. Does actually end up being one of the best options that we can go with here. Now, out of all of the simulations that I ran, Snarl just kind of still stayed at the top of the list as the best one to use because it does actually let us get to our charge moves the fastest. So out of our charge moves, speaking of, we do have Avalanche, Focus Blast, and Foul Play. So Avalanche for 45 energy, we get 90 damage at a 2.0. It does get a stab benefit, so 108 on the damage for a 2.4 after stab. Focus Blast for 75 energy, we get 150 damage at a 2.0 as well, but no stab benefit there, so we're just going to stick with the 150. Then we do have Foul Play for 45 energy, we get 70 damage at a 1.56. Of course, we do get stab off of that, which means 84 on the damage for a 1.87 on the damage per energy ratio. So out of the charge moves, Avalanche is the one that seems like a great option. I feel like Avalanche is a really amazing move just in its own right, but paired with Weavile, it actually looks pretty freaking gnarly. And then we kind of get down to Focus Blast or Foul Play. So immediately, once I saw this, I was like, Focus Blast all the way. It's going to be amazing. But I'm kind of biased towards the fighting type moves this month because I think the fighting type moves are going to be really, really important. I had to run the numbers just to see what Foul Play could actually do because Foul Play's numbers actually look a lot more enticing to me with the low energy for the decent damage. It's not as efficient as Focus Blast by any means, but it is actually pretty decent in terms of its numbers. So of course I ran those numbers. So let's actually take a look at both of these movesets. Basically we're going to have Snarl and Avalanche as our staple, and then we're basically going to be comparing Foul Play with Focus Blast in all of our shield scenarios. And let's start out with the entire cup, of course. As always, Foul Play comes in with a 46.9% in the 0 versus 0, while Focus Blast actually has a 55.2. So we actually do end up doing a little bit better with Focus Blast there. In the 2 versus 0, we actually end up with an 86.5, with Focus Blast being a 90.6. So, of course, here Focus Blast ends up getting it again. In the 0 versus 2, though, both movesets end up at a whopping 1%. So, I always talk at least 10% is what I'm looking for there. but man, do we get demolished. And because it's 1%, I had to take a look and figure out which Pokemon we actually end up just always beating, no matter what, and it was Spoink. So nothing super crazy there. Next, in the 2 versus 2 shield scenario though, we do actually have a tie here for 30.2% for both movesets, so it actually looks pretty good. Now if we actually average all of those numbers together, we actually get an average performance of a 41.15 for foul play, with a Focus Blast getting 44.25. So Focus Blast actually does really, really well compared to foul play. Not like amazing by any means. I mean, a 44% is decent. At least a 50% average would be great, because that means no matter what scenario you're in, you're basically gonna be able to flip a coin and say, I win or lose. So Focus Blast is definitely looking great so far. Now if we take a look at the actual meta, here's where it gets interesting though, because in the 0 versus 0, we actually start out with a 32% for foul play, with Focus Blast going to 36%. So Focus Blast is pulling ahead a little bit already here, but we're actually tied in the 1 versus 0 for 80% on both. And then as well in the 0 versus 1, we're actually tied again, but this time it's a whopping 0%. We don't have any matches that we can win if the opponent actually ends up using a shield. So you gotta kind of keep that in mind if you plan on running Weavile, because the 0 versus 1 is gonna be a pretty big loss for you. Last but not least though, in the 1 versus 1, we do actually have a 20% for foul play and a 28% for Focus Blast. And after you average all those numbers together, not really surprising here, Focus Blast actually does end up doing a little bit better, a 33% average for foul play and a 36% average for Focus Blast. So with that, we're actually gonna take our moveset for the rest of this video with Snarl, Avalanche, and Focus Blast. Even though Focus Blast does have a little bit of a more steep energy cost, it actually is gonna pay off a little bit better in more scenarios than foul play would. So let's actually tear down that 1v1 scenario. Remember, we only had 28% wins against the entire meta, so it's not like we're gonna have too many wins, but let's take a look here. Raikou, Lickitung, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Umbreon, Shelgon, and Piloswine. So of course the big one there for me is Umbreon being a win. Even though we have Snarl, we're basically able to outpace Umbreon, which is a pretty big deal. It's not the best win, it's not like our #1 counter or anything. Like, it's still kind of a hard fought battle, but it's at least a win in terms of up against that Umbreon in an even shield scenario. So in the 1v1, we should win that. As far as our losses go though, we do have quite a few. Minun, Skuntank, Weavile, Pachirisu, Alolan Marowak, Alolan Raticate, Vaporeon, Alolan Sandslash, Lairon, Torkoal, Suicune, Furret, Raichu, Donphan with Charm, Donphan with Counter, Delcatty, Grample, and Alolan Ninetales to round it out. So tons and tons of stuff there. Basically, out of those losses, you can see that there's a pretty big set of them. And some of them make pretty good sense right off the bat. Minun, not so much. Skuntank, maybe, because it only has one real weakness. Weavile, Pachirisu, it's really awkward because some of these are just going to basically come down to what neutral damage can we do to them versus what neutral damage can they do to us. So kind of awkward, but let's actually tear down these losses. Look at the ripe and rotten section, because in the ripe side of things, something that I think that we should actually really consider to put with our Weavile would be Donphan with Counter or Alolan Marowak. And the reason is because we actually have a big problem with things like Alolan Sandslash and Lairon. The big consistency between Alolan Sandslash and Lairon is kind of the steel typing in general. So Donphan with Counter can help out a ton with that, and Alolan Marowak with Fire Spin could definitely help out as well. So I think those are valid choices to kind of pair with Weavile in some scenarios. But we also have problems with Vaporeon and Suicune as well. So what we would really want up against those are things like Minun and even Raichu. I usually mention Raichu in deep dives because he does have Brick Break, which actually could help out in multiple scenarios, just like in the previous one where Alolan Sandslash and Lairon are going to have problems with things like Donphan with Counter and Alolan Marowak. It would also have problems with Raichu, but it kind of can be situational. So Raichu could help cover multiple scenarios, but you could get caught in a sticky situation as well. So think about that before you really decide that Raichu is your main man. Next, we could actually think about Nidoqueen and Lairon as well with our Weavile as well here, because we are going to have a big problem up against the fairy typings. Things like Granbull and Alolan Ninetales are going to give us a ton of trouble right out of the gate. So we do want something that can basically either output poison type damage or maybe even steel type damage to really help take out those as well. And it's not necessarily Nidoqueen or Lairon are the best options here, but anything that can help with the steel type or poison type damage would be amazing. So that's actually going to be it for this deep dive, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. As always, remember that if you want to join the Discord, it is down in the description below. If you want to vote for deep dives, you can easily do that in there. If you ever need any help, you can ping me. You can ask me for whatever you need. I'm generally around. I may not respond to every single conversation, but if you ping me, I will definitely give you a response. So that is actually going to be it. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for hanging out. Until our next video, I'm going to go ahead and head out and play those ending credits for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you could do that, but if you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about the video. I do highly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to support me in any way, there are several links down in the description for Patreon, joining the community here on YouTube, or even just directly PayPal if that's your thing. I greatly appreciate everyone's name that's on screen, as you guys have showed some sort of support outside of just viewing the videos, and I thank you guys. You don't understand from the bottom of my heart. So until our next video, guys, I will catch you then.